Carissa Stanton, welcome to the Lean Out podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad that the universe brought us together and all the synergy that we have and just the validation that knowing that there's other professionals leaning out. I love it. What you're
Yeah, me
doing.
too. Thank you so much. I agree. So tell us a little bit about your work-life balance and how it's different from other people in your chosen field.
Yeah, so currently, we'll just start with currently.
Mhm.
So currently I have a direct primary care pediatric practice. So I'm a holistic integrative medicine pediatrician and it's membership based. I see patients. Actually, I own 5 acres, and so we have a little cabin where I see patients at, and so I basically work from home. It's so nice. I mostly do telehealth because my members have access to me. Um, and then I see maybe 8 patients a week, for an hour each. I spend pretty good amount of time with each patient in person for their like in-person wellness visits. Um, but yeah, I mean, total patient care time a week is probably about 15 hours. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but that's where I'm currently at. And then I have little side passion project ventures. I wrote a book called Motherhood Makeover for mothers that we can talk about it, but it's very aligned with Lean Out. Uh,
Mhm.
except for
Yeah.
yours is towards professionals, mine's is toward mothers.
Yes, absolutely. I've read the book and we will definitely get into that. And as far as your practice goes, I have heard this from lots of people that I've interviewed and friends and colleagues that one of the joys that they have with their direct practice is that they get to spend a lot more time with patients. So you echoed that as well. But tell me why you decided to start this kind of a practice.
If you want to, why don't we just go through the stories? My
Sure.
story of,
Start from
all
the
my
beginning.
pivots and all the things. So, you know, my actually I didn't start in pediatrics. I started in surgery. Um I graduated first in my medical school class and I had always wanted to be a pediatrician, but my advisor was like, "Oh my gosh, you're first in your class. You've got these high board scores and you should really look into, a different residency, maybe surgery. You could do pediatric surgery." And so then, I was like, well, why not? I got into the program. I spent 3 years in general surgery and then a year in pediatric surgery doing research. And that year kind of opened my eyes to what I would be doing the rest of my life. Um, not only the hours and the commitment, but you are in charge of a lot of the traumas, including non-accidental traumas, child abuse. It was tough. Anyone that can do that job, whew, has to have some thick skin. So I already one kind of had a little voice in my head that maybe this wasn't right for me. And then I went back. I had to finish my general surgery. So I still had 2 years of general surgery and then a pediatric surgery fellowship because I knew I didn't want to treat adults, just kids. So I went back as a fourth year general surgery resident on a trauma rotation. And it was just I lost a patient in the middle of the night, that I was in charge of. I had a gun pulled on me in the trauma bay, and then at the same time, my daughter had started kindergarten, and up until that point, I had had her, in medical school, my 4th year of medical school, and up until that point, she had been home with a nanny, so she could wait up until I got home. I could wake her up in the morning before I left and tell her goodbye. But when she started school, we couldn't really do that anymore. So there would be days where I wouldn't see her go to bed. I'd come home after she went to bed. I'd leave before she wake up. And it was really she was starting to have some behavioral issues like refusing to go to school um and I obviously, that was really hard on me. I was leaving her notes, like, in the morning, like, "Have a good day," I just it was
This is
really
a
hard.
five-year-old.
Right. That
Yeah.
doesn't doesn't understand. And yeah, so all of those things kind of made me have a big gut check of, just because I can do this doesn't mean I should. Uh, so I talked to the head of the pediatric residency. There was a spot. So I just pivoted after 4 years of surgery residency. I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And so yeah, so finished general pediatric residency, and everyone was like, "Oh, aren't you gonna go into a fellowship because you have all this surgery training? Aren't you gonna go into ICU or GI?" And I was like, "I'm done." At that point, I think my daughter was in 2nd grade, and I was like, "I just wanna work part-time." And I did. I worked part-time. I wanted to take my daughter to school, pick her up. I wanted to be involved, go on field trips. So I did. I worked as a part-time pediatrician for, 10 years and got to enjoy her schooling and her upbringing, and it was great. So I think my biggest advice is to people always, just because you can, really make sure you should, like, it aligns with you. And I know that's in your book.
It is, and I just wrote it down too with a big star by it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, and that is the whole premise behind this lean out movement. It's very easy to get trapped on the treadmill of achievement, and your story is a very good example of that, where, "Oh, you're top of the class. Well, you have to do this."
Right.
I had this similar experience where, "Oh, you have a master's degree in engineering. Well, you have to go into this anesthesia subspecialty because you know all this physics behind ultrasounds and stuff like that." And I so much resonate with what you said, which is that you just wanted to have a simple practice. You wanted to have your practice. You wanted to see patients, but didn't want all those complications because you wanted to be able to take your daughter to school and be able to pick her up.
Yeah, for sure. And I always go back to, I first wanted to be a pediatrician when I was 9 years old, and my brother had really severe asthma, and I was kind of helping take care of him, and the pediatrician was like, "You should be a pediatrician." And it just stuck, and I wanted to do what he did for my brother. That's what I wanted to do. And I kinda got off that path. I let other people kinda steer me off of that path, but I eventually kind of found my way back. So, it's just, don't let outside forces, guide you, listen to yourself. Um, I would just encourage, and that's why I think your book and my book so align, because I think female professionals are getting outside pressures from society about expectations and all these things, and I think mothers are experiencing the same thing. All these perfectionism expectations and everything. So, yeah.
Yes. So tell me, let's talk about your book. Tell me why you decided to write a book that's centered around motherhood as opposed to parenting or children since you're a pediatrician.
Yeah, it was my own personal journey again that kind of brought me there. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune thyroid disorder about 2 years ago. And it forced me to slow down. I mean, I had low thyroid. I had no energy. I had to slow down. And I had to start prioritizing my own wellness and self-care and set boundaries and do a lot of things that I hadn't done, um, in my career and my motherhood. I was, burning the candle at both ends, trying to fulfill the self-sacrifice narrative that, like, to be a good mother, you have to sacrifice yourself for your children and your family. And so when I turned that narrative and for myself, like, "Hey guys, I've got to start taking care of myself first," I thought my family was gonna, like, suffer. Like, it's like, "Oh no, everyone's gonna, like, no one's
No
gonna
one's going to
eat
eat.
anything." It's just everyone's gonna, like, have be sick and be unhappy. But it was actually the opposite. My family really stepped up, really, did the things I was doing for them for themselves. And actually, everyone seemed happier because I was happier. And I think they felt more productive. And So it was just this big light bulb moment for me. And I see, over the years, I've seen my mothers of my patients struggle. They walk into my office just fatigued and exhausted and burnt out. And so then I started doing wellness coaching for mothers because I basically kind of healed my own autoimmune just by slowing down, stress management, sleep, basic things, not going down the rabbit hole of a bunch of, labs and supplements and all that. That's a separate story, but so then I started doing wellness coaching for mothers of my patients because I was like, "Oh, if I take care of them, then that's helping their whole family and their children." And it was crazy because things that I had worked on with their kids, like anxiety, ADHD, facial motor tics. I had a kid with like a chronic facial motor tic that we had tried everything. When I helped their mothers with their ailments, guess what happened? The
Tick went
kids.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, the tick went away and the kids have started improving.
Mhm.
So then I was like, and then I started researching, and it's not a coincidence that 1 in 5 women have a chronic mental health or physical health condition. And 1 in 5 children have a chronic mental or physical chronic condition. Like, completely mirror each other. And so I was like, wow, here I have been focusing on the kids when really the solution is their mothers because kids mirror their mothers and they're only going to become as well as moms. So if moms are self-sacrificing themselves and their wellness is down here, I mean, we could do whatever we want to the kid, but they're not going to go above, their who they are mirroring. So, yeah.
Why do you think this is the case? So I remember this concept stuck out to me in reading your book, which is that you make this case that well-being of mothers is very closely affecting the well-being of the families and children. Why do you think it's the mothers and not the fathers?
Well, I think fathers too. I mean, I think children, obviously, there's a connection there. I mean, I don't want to downplay that at all. But I mean, we have to acknowledge that they came from us, right? They're a piece from us. But even adopted children, right, have a special connection and bond with mothers. And for better or worse, there are gender roles. I mean, estrogen and progesterone makes women, our emotional centers, more attuned to our children, right? So we are more emotionally attuned to their needs, to them. Um, and so, I mean, that's just nature. And so I think they look to us for that regulation. We are their
Mhm.
co-regulators because we have that, emotional ability.
Yeah. Tell me why you decided to call it Motherhood Makeover, because I think of the term makeover applying to external, the way that people view you, but how does it apply to more like internal health and wellness?
I'm a big analogy person. You might have noticed that from the book. As a pediatrician, I really try to, I don't know, kids really respond to stories or
Mm.
analogies, because when you're talking literally, sometimes it just doesn't click with them. So for me, when I looked at what I did with my life, the shifts I made in my lifestyle, in prioritizing myself first, letting go of perfectionism, like, so what if we eat dinner on paper plates? Like, we're all gonna live, So letting go of that, of what other people thought of me, all these things. I thought of how can I explain this to women that this is doable? Because we talk about like, oh, you just need to prioritize and change your lifestyle. I think that's very abstract for people. But to me, let's say, and it actually started because my co-author, Liz Wolf, she had cut her hair. She had always had long hair and she cut her hair. And she was like, I was just tired of the messy buns. I just felt, messy when I was wearing my messy bun. I never styled it. And so she cut it. And I was like, wait a minute, that's what we're trying to get women to do with their shifts in their motherhood and everything was you have this long hair with the thought that you're going to style it, but instead you don't, and it just makes you feel disheveled. well, just cut it. Like, you are in control, right? You can make over your motherhood. It's this is not, society portrays mothers nowadays as these like tired minivan driving, like that's just our destiny. That we're
Mhm.
just going to be exhausted running around our kids in a minivan from practice to practice. And it
And
doesn't
I
have to
hate
be
the
that way.
wine culture too, where it's like,
Yes.
"Oh, every night I need to then drown out my, frustrations with glasses of wine."
Right. And that being a mother and raising kids is supposed to be this chaotic, exhaustive, and I'm not saying it doesn't have its moments, right? It has its ups and downs, but it can also be you don't have to be harmed in the process. And what I'm finding is women are being harmed. They're having mental health issues, physical health issues. They're, burnt out, and it doesn't have to be harmful.
Yeah, and you know what kinda just occurred to me with it is the term makeover a lot of times in our culture now, especially with TV and these radical extreme makeover type shows, it connotes a transformation of some sort, right? But you said something earlier that made a lot of sense, which is that sometimes drastic changes are required. And so it may not be cutting 10 inches off your hair, but it might be all of a sudden I need to place fierce boundaries during a certain time of the day, or I need to prioritize my health in a different way than I've been doing, and just really like taking a completely different turn.
Yeah, and your book is basically like the professional makeover, right? Like mine is
It's
motherhood
true.
makeover, and yours is like it's empowering. You are in control of your career. It doesn't have to be what it is for everyone else. And your book was
Mhm.
very validating for me because I mean, I see patients at a cabin on my land. Is that even a real doctor? Like, you
I
know?
love that. I didn't know that you had your office right there, which is just so beautiful. I bet you that people get a lot of peace when they come and see you.
Yeah, I mean, the kids, see the chickens, and it's just, yeah, it's what I've always tried to do with my practice is replicate be a good example, what I want families to be, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
what I'm trying to get the message out there is that we need to simplify, reclaim some of our traditions that we've lost, like, grow our own food and
Mhm.
cook our own food and, sit together as a family on Sunday morning, so I wanted to be that example for families of being kind of counterculture, if you will.
Yes. Absolutely. I love that term. And I think it's very applicable to both you and me.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing is your book really resonated with me and validated for me some of this idea of the paradox of how much abundance of choice and information we have in our society because you address this issue. And a lot of people who follow me know that I have given talks on craziness of social media, for instance. And you asked in the book, why does everything have to be so extra? And it's not even
True.
just about media, but it was also, I think your example was something related to your daughter in either dance or sports. And it was like all of a sudden the costumes have to be crazy and they need to cost hundreds of dollars. And so tell me a little bit more about how you've simplified in your own life. How has this affected you? Just putting aside those things and trying to embrace simplicity.
I think this is a trap that women fall into, not just with motherhood, but also careers, right? I mean,
Yes.
the more you work, the more you achieve, the more they expect, the more money you
Mhm.
make, the more you spend. It's just like this hamster
And the
wheel
more
that you're caught in.
complicated it gets. Yes.
Yes. And then you have to upkeep that lifestyle. I mean, I remember when I was in private practice, making 3 times as much as I would now. I don't know where the money went, but I know I kind of like I think about it and I'm like, gosh, I used to get massages all the time and I used to, get a facial all the time or this or that I don't do anymore. And it was to keep up those appearances and to make up for all the stress I was experiencing, and I don't need those things anymore. So, for me, it's discernment. It's being able to decide, okay, you know, do I really need this? Do I really want to do this? Does this align with me? Just taking that time to really, instead of just reflexively saying yes, reflexively buying something, reflexively doing something, stopping to think about it, being very intentional is a huge thing with this process. For me, professionally, it was setting boundaries with like call as a direct primary care practice, hey, I'm not going to answer your overnight calls anymore. If 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 it's that bad, you should go to the ER.
Mhm.
That was a big thing for me. Personally, Saturday mornings are kind of sacred for me to enjoy my tea and just watch my birds. And if somebody, had an activity like a dance thing or a soccer thing, just being intentional about, you know what, I'm just gonna miss this one. Like this is my self-love time. So yeah, I think intention is a big part of that process for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely something to remember. And I love the idea of stopping to think before you reflexively say yes by add more, do more.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because, society wants us to do extra because it benefits the consumerism,
Someone, yes.
Exactly. The more we make, the more we spend, the more we have to upkeep. Like it just, so it takes a lot of intention to say no because it's easier just to go along with society. But yeah, once you do, it'll just kind of feel right and it'll just snowball.
Yeah. Another common theme that is in your book that I really loved is leaning out from perfectionism. So, one thing that I do have to confess is that recently I did a solo episode of my podcast and I quoted you. You
Oh
were
gosh, I'll have to
saying,
listen.
yeah, so the
Well,
episode,
thank
I'll
you.
link it in the show notes. It's called The Scars Are Inevitable. And you were talking to Liz Wolfe on her podcast and said, the scars are inevitable. No matter what you do, there's going to be some scars. And yet, the thing that I really took from that is scars and not being perfect is also a sign of a life well lived and a life of intentional choices. And sometimes those choices are good and sometimes they're bad, but we examine that and we move on. So tell me a little bit more about how leaving behind perfectionism has affected you personally and professionally.
Yeah, so what triggered that comment was a lot of my mothers will say to me, I don't want to scar them for life. I have to do all these things so I don't scar them for life. And I'm like, you're human. You're not going to do everything right. We're not robots, right? You're not going to do everything right. All you can do is the best you can do in that moment. Um, and when you're, faced with a decision, listen to your gut, find your intuition, because if you align that choice with your intuition, even if that choice ends up being a bad decision, at least you went with yourself and not, outside forces. So that has held true for me because I, used to be a people pleaser. I used to really not want to disappoint people because I felt like my worth was tied into what other people thought of me, right? You know, hence the surgery, hence the private practice, seeing the extra patients every day. I thought you and I have a chapter that has the same title. We're human beings, not human doers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing. Once you absolve your worth from being connected with what you do or people think, you have let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism is basically just saying that I am not of value unless I am perfect and other people see me that way.
Yeah.
So really just letting it go. Like sticking with your own intuition. I mean, just like, seeing patients at my house or doing wellness coaching. Oh, you have this medical degree and all this training. Why would you just coach? And I'm like, you don't understand. I make the most difference when I'm doing that. And I feel the most fulfilled. And so knowing that it aligns with me makes it, I don't care what other people think. Now I've let go of what other people, my worth is what makes me happy now.
Yes, I definitely resonate with that. Being someone who does a podcast for free and who does coaching as well, and who could make a lot more money just doing more anesthesia. But that doesn't light me up in the same way. I still do
Mhm.
enjoy doing it to a certain degree. I don't want to do it full time. I want to do these other things that give me fulfillment and that help people in a different way than a direct patient care relationship. And so we have multiple facets and we have multiple interests. And why not, do those things, even if it doesn't go with what the typical society recommends?
Right, and we have to make money, right? I call, my primary practice is called Mindful Pediatrics, and I call Mindful Pediatrics my day job. Like, it's what
Yeah,
pays the bills. It's my day job, so I know, and I do enjoy it enough. But what I'm really passionate about is the coaching, the content creating, like, really helping mothers and families make these shifts in their life and be counterculture and get out of the rabbit holes that they fell in and all these things. And when I was in surgery or when I was in private practice, I was working against my like authentic calling. And it ultimately, I think, is what caused my autoimmune disease, you know?
definitely being out of alignment with who you feel you are authentically is a recipe for mental, physical, burnout, problems. So that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It takes a lot of energy. It's kind of like I tell people it's like running in high heels versus running in tennis shoes. It just takes a lot more. It can be done, but running in high heels working against what you authentically want to do. But it's so much easier to run in tennis shoes. Even though the work's the same, you're running the same distance, you're running the same speed, it feels easier when you're aligned. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, the book is amazing. I love it. I definitely would recommend it to any listeners. Motherhood Makeover. Tell us again, what is the subtitle?
Yeah, it's a pediatrician's guide to reclaiming your authentic motherhood.
Excellent.
So,
The book is great. Where else can people find you if they want to learn more or connect with you?
yeah, so my website is carissastantonmd.com. And I have on there kind of several little ventures that of course, the book's on there. I made a course called the Root Cause Roadmap. Because I just found with my coaching sessions, everyone that came to me would always come to me with, oh, I need some labs or I need supplements, which may need to be done. But most of the time, they just need little shifts in their lifestyle, like quality sleep, stress management, diet, like just I call it foundational health. So, and nervous system dysregulation's a big one. If you're in survival mode, like we probably were in our early careers, if you're in survival mode, you're not in rest and digest. So you're never going to heal or be well. So just helping people get regulated out of survival mode. So yeah, that course kind of guides you through that. Basically what I would do in a coaching session. Or I do have a link to schedule one-on-one coaching sessions. I have some freebies and fun stuff, but yeah, I'm just trying to help families do what I did. Like just like you're doing with your book and podcast and content.
I feel that we have a very similar purpose, which is to lead by example and to show people that it's possible. And I love
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Any last words of wisdom, especially for someone who now has a grown daughter who's out of the house and doing awesome, has flown the coop and is flying? Any advice for people who, like me, who have a young child still in the home?
Well, I mean, of course, don't sweat the small stuff. But, I tell first time parents my best advice for being a parent is have no expectations
Mm.
because they are always going to go against that. So, no matter what. So, I'd expected, when she went to college, like, oh, my job is done. Oh, now I can, start knitting or whatever. And it's kind of never done, which is good. Um, but you continue to have to set boundaries. You have to continue to prioritize yourself yeah, and especially with cell phones, them being able to text you all the time, you have
Yeah,
to really set boundaries. Parenting is that constant struggle of letting them go, but also being available and it's still that dance. It doesn't
I
go
think
away.
that that is a very good point, and it's the same for work-life balance. It's a continuous practice, and anything that's worthwhile probably is.
Yeah, it's a continued balancing act, right?
Well, Carissa, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom today.
Awesome, Don. Thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.